Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Sponge Chat. From wherever you are in the world, I hope you're all having a lovely, well, at least here in Spain, it's the end of the academic year. So I hope that if you're in Europe, you're having a lovely end of the academic year. If you're in other parts of the world and the year is still going on, have fun, I suppose, is what I want to say. Just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's been sending comments, has been saying they're finding the videos useful. This is exactly what they're for. So they're for you guys and hopefully providing insights on different career paths within AOT. On Thursday last week, I had the pleasure to sit down with Teresa Bestwick. And Teresa is quite a prolific trainer within Spain. She's based in the south of Spain, and she has she works on CertTESOL, on the DipTesol with Oxford TEFL. So she knows her stuff, and so we got to talk about her journey from teacher into trainer. Some advice that she has for teachers. We also looked at some other stuff that she's involved in, such as her blog and how that's helped her, which was really interesting, especially for me as a blogger as well. Of course, we had our book recommendations, some very interesting book recommendations from Teresa this time. So make sure you take a look at that. These Sponge Chats, I've had some questions like, when are they going to finish? But then the aim is not for them to finish. And if there are teachers, trainers, managers, editors, publishers within EOT that are in parts of the world which I haven't spoken to teachers from yet. So for example, the Middle East, Asia, the Americas, even Australia, that will be interested in sharing their insights on their journey within EOT, please get in touch, because I'd love to speak with you all. Without further ado, I will leave you to the Sponge Chat with Teresa and myself. I hope that you will enjoy it. If you do, please give us a like and a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, bye. Hi, Teresa. How are you?
Morning. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's very lovely to see you again. I suppose let's go straight into it. Why are we here this morning? The purpose of Sponge Chats is really to give teachers. So I'm just going to change so I can see myself a little better. Okay, it's really to give teachers a perspective on the different career paths that are available within EOT. Look at some professionals that have taken those career paths and see how they've got there. Some challenges that they've faced along the way, and hopefully encourage teachers to maybe want to take on those other career paths. And I suppose at the end of the day, my idea is to try and keep teachers in the industry, not lose them to mainstream education, or at worst, just leaving education completely. And so that's where we come to you, Teresa. Maybe we can start off with, who is Teresa?
Okay, so I've been teaching, so I started teaching in Spain in 2004. And to be honest, I kind of fell into TEFL. So when I was at university, I did languages. So I had the opportunity to do a year abroad. And at my university, they offered kind of a 1-week TEFL taster course.
Oh, interesting.
People who were going on their year abroad so that they could kind of earn money on the side teaching English. So I signed up for this course, realized on day one that I wasn't going to get anything from it just being a week. So it was kind of week one of a 4-week course, before CertTESOL. So I signed up to do the rest of the course. So it was very much a kind of, oh, right, now I'm going to be a teacher sort of thing. And then came out to Spain and got into teaching and just love it. I mean, I love being in the classroom, whether it's virtual or face-to-face. And I think part of the problem is that now I'm not teaching so much, but I love all the other bits of TEFL that I do
Yeah.
as well. So, I mean, it's really tricky sometimes because there's just so many things you want to be involved in, and not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So obviously you moved into teaching. Could you talk about perhaps some of the positions that you've been lucky enough to, obviously you've worked towards, and you've been able to fill those to fill those roles?
Yep. So teaching, obviously, and then I got into academic management, working as kind of a coordinator for a centre. So when I was working at Active Language, we had the language school, but then we also did classes in a mainstream school at lunchtime and after school. And so I got into kind of the academic management role there, making sure teachers were okay, that they had all the resources, chatting to students. And that was kind of the bit of the job that I didn't enjoy.
Right.
Yeah, it would be, there was always these one or two parents that you had to ring.
Yeah.
And just, I just got a bit tired of the conversation of, hello, yeah, I'm ringing up about so-and-so. And the mother or the father would go, yeah. And so I found that difficult. So I decided to move away from academic management. And then I also got into teacher training through Active Language, doing their CertTESOL course. And I was lucky because at the time, it wasn't a requirement to have a DipTesol or a Delta to be a trainer.
Right.
So I could actually start training, with experience, being trained up by the centre. And then I did my DipTesol.
Right.
And now what else have I done? I've done some content writing. So kind of writing blog posts not for myself, but for others. Or I have a blog.
Yeah.
Not particularly well used at the moment, but it's there. And then I got into writing materials through a publisher.
No, brilliant. I mean, and I think you're also, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're part of the Oxford TEFL team as well. You consult on the DipTesol as well. Is that correct?
Yep. So that's coming up in July, doing some more tutoring, which is nice. It's very different to tutoring on the CertTESOL.
Brilliant. No, of course. And maybe we'll have a look at some of those differences later. I suppose the question is, why teacher training? Why? What was sort of the thing that made you go click? Okay, I want to try doing the teaching on the CertTESOL or moving in.
So again, I think when I first started working at Active, I was very much aware that they were really into professional development. Whereas the school that I'd been at before, it was a good school. The classes were fine, students were fine, colleagues were fine, but it was very much, turn up, do your job. We'll send you off to Athayer once a year, and that's your development. And so I kind of, when I was going off to Athayer, the conference down in Andalusia, I kept seeing kind of Active Language, Danny Jones, Active Language, Daniel Barber.
Always there, no? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought, this is a school where they value professional development. And so so it was really more about the professional development side. And then they offered me the opportunity to get into teacher training.
Brilliant. Excellent.
So again, I kind of fell into it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be one of the common themes the roots for teacher training I found very different for everyone. Everyone's sort of taken something a little bit different. But I find one common thing that I'd say with most people that I've spoken with is the idea of support in where you're working. It's very difficult to get into teacher training without having people support you, provide those opportunities. So it sounds like obviously Active Language provided you with a brilliant environment in which to develop in, which is amazing. And so you've moved into teacher training. I mean, you're tutoring on a DipTesol diploma-level course, obviously quite significant. But I imagine along the way you've come across some challenges regarding teacher training, or perhaps there are things that stick out in your mind as maybe the difficult aspects. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into your thoughts about those.
Yeah. So recently I've been struggling a little with the whole 4 or 5 week pre-service qualification.
Right.
I think obviously it's a really good course, and it fulfills a purpose.
Mm.
Um, but I don't know whether it's the more you kind of learn about ELT, the more you realize how much there is, how much information there is that you really want to give people.
Mm.
And in the time that you have on a CertTESOL,
Not possible, no.
scratch the surface. But I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the course. I think it's schools that teachers go into really need to have things in place to help those teachers develop.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, I was lucky, like my first teaching job was a really small school. Like there were the two bosses, me and two other teachers. So it was a really supportive environment where I could learn, I could ask people with more experience. But I think, so often people kind of finish their qualification and go off and stop. I mean, unless people are really motivated themselves,
Yeah.
it's very easy to kind of, yay, I've got my certificate, and that's me done. So I'm struggling a bit with the kind of not the ethics of the CertTESOL, but how we can do more, or how we can inform teachers more on the course about ways to further develop afterwards.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I've always maintained that the onus is on the academies or the institutions where first year teachers come to really suck them into the industry. And, yeah, we've got people from all walks of life coming from all over the world, different educational backgrounds. But I think there's something that when you get them, no matter where they come from or their experiences, if those first year or two is not satisfactory, I find that there's not much keeping them in the industry. And I think we have, unfortunately, quite a low retention rate of potentially very good teachers. It's quite sad. It's quite sad.
Yeah. And I mean, I think as well, particularly here in Spain in recent years, with the big boom for language, for English, with the Plan Bologna, where students needed a B1 or a B2 in order to get their university degrees. And so a lot of people who weren't ELT professionals at all started going, oh, I can open up an academy.
Yeah.
And having no real understanding of the profession and what you need to do to support your teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something else, right?
Really?
Yeah, no, can completely agree. But I think it's perhaps around the world as well. And not just in Spain, but certainly in Spain, there are many places where it's viewed probably primarily or too much as an economic endeavor. But anyway, that's for another chat, I suppose. Right. So obviously we spoke about CertTESOL there. What about teacher training? So in terms of you obviously have the pre-service training, we have inset training, and then also you have the sort of the diploma level training. Are there any sort of specific differences between the three, and any challenges that are specific to any of them?
So I think one of the challenges going into the DipTesol is the way that the teachers are introduced to the process of observation. Because obviously when people come on the CertTESOL, it's the first time they've been observed generally, first time they've reflected. So there's a lot of hand holding and step by step.
Yeah.
These are the sort of questions, and this is how you should think about them. Whereas I think sometimes in the DipTesol, when you go into the teaching practice, your teaching is suddenly picked apart after you've had years of experience, and then you're being asked questions to really delve deeper. And I think sometimes it can be challenging for the teachers if they haven't become fully aware yet of that process,
Right.
of you know, we're going to ask you really difficult questions, but it's not because you're teaching bad. It's our job to ask you these delving questions.
Involving them in that sort of that reflective inquiry, right? So
yeah.
it's difficult.
And sometimes as well, you do get that bit of kind of imposter syndrome because, I mean, people who do the DipTesol, you know, some of them have been teaching for 20 odd years, and often as well in very different backgrounds. So for example, you'll get EAP teachers, EAL teachers, and, you know, you're kind of going and asking these questions and going, I don't know anything about this, and this person's got so much more experience than me.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I suppose that's one thing that, you know, in my first year, I was, you know, first year trainer, you sort of still like a deer in the headlights, you know, looking at trying to provide advice. So I knew what was working in our context, and I knew perhaps what was, you know, this was okay and this was not good, but still trying to get that message across to people with far more experience with you. And I also found that my age worked against me with some teachers. So I'm quite young for a trainer in a sense. You know, I'm turning 30 this year, and some of the teachers that I'm working with, they're, you know, they're in their 40s or their 50s, and they've been teaching for quite a long time. And so I found that quite difficult. And in a sense, you know, you feel, am I actually right to do this job? That sort of thing. I've had those thoughts before. And I imagine on the dip, it must be even more strong, those feelings, because obviously you must be dealing with some very experienced and very good teachers, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, and also very, very well read teachers. I mean, obviously before they do their teaching practice, they've done other units.
Yeah.
I mean, similar to Delta Module 1, you've got all your background reading. Exactly. And so sometimes people are coming along either with ideas that they formed during their years of experience, or with a lot more recent knowledge than perhaps I have. I kind of go, oh my God, I should be reading so much more. Yeah, it's on my to-do list to read a bit more.
I think I mentioned this in one of my other sponge chats, but it was I still think there's this idea of, for example, if we have two teachers, there's one teacher who's been teaching for 20 years and has been developing for 20 years. Then there's another teacher who's been teaching for 20 years but has done the same year of teaching 20 times. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've heard that before as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. That's because I do think there are many teachers like that. But I don't think that's primarily their fault. I think it's because of the environment, the teaching environment they've been in. They haven't been pushed or provided with the support to develop. But so yeah, I still find that challenging. What about in terms of feedback? Observation is quite a large part of being a trainer. How do you find, and most of the other trainers I've spoken with, they found that one of the challenges they said was providing feedback. Is that something that you find challenging still?
I do, because I need to get better at my questions, I think. Right. You know, even with the years of experience, I still sometimes hear myself asking a question and going, oh, I could have worded that better. Or it's when you're trying to ask people questions to lead them to see what you want them to see, rather than telling them.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes be difficult because you ask a question and they answer in a different way, and then you think, oh, was that the way that I asked the question? Or was it just that they don't have this awareness of something? So that's definitely a challenge and something that I want to get much better at.
Yeah, I completely. I was reading the other day actually something about it was also in a classroom context, but it can be applied to a training context. The idea that the teacher has their objective and the learner has their objective, but when the learner cannot meet that the teacher's objective, they change it, but the teacher doesn't know that the learner has changed that objective. So I was thinking about this in a training context. It's kind of the same, where I have my objective that I want to get across, but sometimes the teacher doesn't see that or interprets it very differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me though, I think the biggest thing is actually making it impactful. So not beating around the bush too much, but making it so that they can go away with, you know, one or two clear action points that they very clearly understand.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because yeah, one of the pieces of feedback we got when we moved the CertTESOL online was that we needed to change the way that we were giving feedback, because when we were doing things on the face-to-face course, you would have the lesson plan, you would have their reflections on a piece of paper,
Right.
and often we would write questions. And so when we first did our first CertTESOL online last summer, we were doing the same. And then the moderators kind of said, when do these questions get answered? Because before, they in a face-to-face environment, it was much easier to kind of say, why do you think this is? And then they would talk to their peers, or maybe they would come and find one of the tutors. Whereas in the online environment, it was, why do you think this? I don't know, you need to tell me. So we did get feedback that we should be more explicit
Really?
in giving feedback on the online course. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't think you can put like all teachers in the same boat, right? Some teachers are very, give it to me, lay it on me. And then other teachers, if you do that, I find they're just far too defensive, and it turns out to be sort of a degenerative sort of feedback session.
Absolutely.
It's still working on it, isn't it? Still working on it.
But I think, again, this is kind of in the initial setup. So whether it is a pre-service course or a dip, because even on a pre-service course, it can sometimes be difficult for people who have come in from another career.
Right.
So, you quite often get people who have reached a good point in their initial career and then perhaps are semi-retiring or deciding they wanted to move abroad to do something completely different. And so for them as well to kind of come in at this level in one career and then be like, boom, straight back down at the bottom. And it is about how you introduce people to the concept of reflection and feedback and making sure that the process is well identified, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. Completely agree with that.
Again, you don't have a lot of time for.
Yeah. It's yeah. What do you think you enjoy more? Pre-service course, inset, or the dip?
Ooh.
I've never asked this question before, but I'm asking it now. You're the first one to.
Right. That's a really tricky question. Because there are features of each. So one of the things that I love about in-service training is the continuity of it, the fact that it's something that builds, whereas, with the CertTESOL, with the DipTesol, you're perhaps seeing these people for 4 or 5 weeks. And although you can see the process in that period of time, at the end of it, it's like, okay, bye. Whereas in service, you're training people over a year and helping them develop. And I think as well, they're much more able to see the value of it.
Right.
I'd say another thing with the CertTESOL, DipTesol is just people don't have enough time to absorb everything and take it on and put things into practice. I know certainly when I did my DipTesol, I got to the end and I was like, I don't feel like I can remember anything. Like it's really stand out. But and I've actually been thinking recently about like doing something like either a trainer course or like a Delta Module 1.
Yeah.
Like really taking the time to do it and to engage with it much more than I felt I had time to do during the dip.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. To go back to, or come back to that, to go back to the pre-service inset or the dip. I haven't actually taught on any of the sort of the pre-service or the dip or a Delta. One day, perhaps, I'd like to do that. But I really enjoy working with teachers, over a period of a year, and sometimes obviously even longer. And you really do see teachers, bloom yeah, I'm going to use bloom. They're coming out, and it's really interesting, and it's great to see that what effective professional development can actually achieve. There is also the fact that there are some teachers that are slower to develop, or perhaps are just completely against development. But I think they're few and far between when there's a good dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think again, it's about how the center sets it up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because development can be seen as kind of an added must do,
Yeah,
than a bonus. Particularly, if you're teaching 24 hours a week, plus all your planning, all your marking, all the admin side of things, and now you want me to also spend time doing this.
Yeah.
I think even teachers who are kind of really keen on development, it can sometimes get a bit overwhelming.
What do you think is the most okay, so within our academy, so we've planned and implemented the development program. We have, our observation scheme. We have our peer observation scheme where we cover the teacher's class so that they can go and observe, so that it's not cutting into their own time. We have our workshops. We generally have thematic workshops. So term one, we're going to look at, I don't know, questioning for our 4 workshops that we're going to do. But then we also have mentoring. And if I had to only choose one of those things, I would say it would be the mentoring. That's for me. Is there a development tool that if you could only choose one, what would it be, do you think?
I think peer observations, if they're set up and developed well,
Right.
are really handy, because one of the things about peer observations is it's very equaling. So often kind of development, we talked about this in a TEFL development chat a while back, whether development comes from management and is kind of imposed, and in terms of the topics that people are thinking about, the focus, whether it does come kind of set up with almost a syllabus from the year. Whereas with peer observations, it's much more, what do I want to see in this class?
Right.
And hopefully, the teacher has the opportunity to go, well, actually, I know Kate's really good at classroom management, so I want to watch her because I'm struggling with my class. Or, oh, I know, so Harry does loads of games, so I'd like to go and watch Harry because I want to see kind of the pedagogical value of the games and how he does them. And, peer observations I would go with.
Peer observations, right. Bit of an interesting question on that. Always have an observation task for a peer observation, or not necessarily?
Depends what you mean by an observation task.
So, for example, let's say that John wants to watch Sergio, because Sergio is amazing at classroom management. And I have a peer observation task that focuses the teacher observing on classroom management. Should I give that task to him, to John, or should I just let John go in there and take what he wants from it?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because whenever you do a focused observation, that becomes your focus, and then it becomes much easier for everything else to get forgotten. You're asking me really difficult questions.
Sorry.
I think I am a fan of an observation focus.
Right.
So maybe some kind of questions, or maybe a focus on a particular moment.
Right.
But rather than kind of a task that's where you're, every stage you're kind of writing something down and really focusing. You want to be able to take away the general.
So quite a specific thing, right? So make it quite specific, but not too I don't know.
Not too limiting.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Brilliant. All right. Brilliant. Interesting. Yeah, I think I agree. We often have, when we do peer observations, we try and incorporate some kind of reflective task that goes with it. So for classroom management, what's one thing that you would steal, or what's one question you have for the teacher, that sort of thing.
And one other thing I would say for peer observations is for there to be a kind of pre-observation chat, so that the teacher being observed gets to kind of say as well, oh, could you look at this? So
that's
that it's
actually
very
really
much
good. Yeah.
a two-way process.
Yeah, yeah.
So both people get something out of it.
Definitely agree with that. You mentioned the DIP or Delta, so diploma level courses. Not having time to process everything. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I did my distance over 2.5 years, and I still found at the end of that 2.5 years, I was just like, now I said this before, that Delta doesn't sort of teach you everything. It just teaches you how much you don't know, or the DIP, it just opens you up to the sea of knowledge that is out there.
And you're starting a master's soon as well, aren't you?
Supposed to be, yeah. We'll see if it goes ahead, but I've been accepted onto the course, so I'd like to. We'll see how we go. Would you say that you did your DIP quite a while ago, and you treat on the DIP now? Would you say that doing the DIP or the Delta is a stepping stone to moving into teacher training, or I don't know?
I think the problem is it's often a requirement to become a tutor. But the course, I'm less familiar with the Delta, but the DipTesol, it doesn't prepare you really to be a teacher trainer. It doesn't set you up for how to deal with other teachers. It's very much a kind of a personal journey.
Yeah.
So it's about my teaching, obviously learning about the wider world of ELT, but it's very much a kind of, this is to make you a better teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it makes you very critical of your teaching. But I think there are many aspects of training that it's almost like a sort of a washback. There are many positive things that you see on there, and you're like, okay, that's effective training. But I think that there's a large amount of the teacher training world that's missed out on those, and I suppose that's why there are other courses available, like the Cambridge Train the Trainer was quite good. It's quite I wouldn't say it's deep. I mean, it's only an 8-week course, but it gives teachers that are looking to move into training more of an understanding of the areas where they need to do more research, or whether they need to look deeper. But also, I the most beneficial I found is to talk to other trainers. I imagine yourself, you work in an environment where you're surrounded by these people with, it's the wealth of knowledge. It's like, I want to steal your idea. And that's what I want. So that for me has been the most useful thing, I think, specifically to developing as a trainer. I'm not sure. Would you agree that working with people in that context has helped you more?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Obviously, the process of being trained up as a trainer was observing what other trainers were doing, not only in terms of the teaching practice and the observed lessons and things like that, but as well the way that they delivered input sessions, and yeah, just the whole process. So it's definitely something that you learn by doing.
Right.
But I mean, with the train the trainer course, because then it seems really weird. So you kind of do this train the trainer course, but you're not actually qualified to be a trainer because you don't have a DipTesol or a Delta. But then you have a DipTesol or a Delta, but you're not then actually experienced.
Yeah.
Never mind. But so, I mean, did you enjoy the train the trainer course then?
I did. I mean, I'd been training for, I think, 2 years Like I'd already been established, I'd already had the chance to sort of come up with my own program and implement it with the teaching staff. Make many mistakes. And so it was good. There were loads of things that I learned. Or perhaps a better way to say it is that it focused my attention more on training specific concepts. So I found that really, really useful. I definitely would like to go further. I would like to do, for example, the Nile Masters in Professional Development one day. I would have loved to have done it this time, but unfortunately, that Masters is not available for student funding. So I chose a Masters in TESOL. But one day I would like to get there and go and look at that. I think that's one of the, with our industry, there's no real clear progression sometimes, in the sense that there's no real, everyone knows the qualifications that you can do to become a really experienced teacher, or something that's going to get you a job all around the world. But moving away from that, even into other areas, for example, I've got a number of sponge chats coming up with, academic managers, directors of studies, publishers. There's no real ladder that's clear that you have to climb to get there. And
I think that's why these sponge chats are so good, because you are talking to people with a variety of experiences. Because when I first got into teaching, I just assumed that I would open my own school one day. I was going into a place where a couple had opened their own school. The other couple of teachers who were a couple, they were thinking of opening their own school. So it was like, oh yeah, so I'll teach for a few years and then I'll open my own school. And I was completely unaware of anything else. And even though I was working with course books, I never put two and two together that I could write a course book one day, or that was something else. That wasn't teaching.
Yeah. Hey, well, thank you. I mean, I hope these sponge chats do achieve that. I hope they give teachers these different perspectives on where they can go. But speaking about things that you've done as well, I mean, you've done a few things. You've done content writing. I think have you written for course books, or has it mainly been for publishers for online content? Or
so I've done 3 course books. I worked with Cengage National Geographic, doing a teacher's book. That was my first experience writing for a publisher, which set me up really well. It was a complete baptism of fire.
Right.
Realize again how much I did not know, how completely unprepared I was for it. So thank you very much to the team there for putting up. And then I've done 2 course books which should be coming out this year.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Congratulations. Amazing.
Thank you.
Can we know any details about publisher or
so one is a publisher based in Egypt called Prime Press.
Right.
And it's a course book series for secondary.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of the writers on that. And the other one is again a course book series for teens through a company called Smooth Content.
Very cool. Excellent. Amazing. Well, that's phenomenal. Congratulations. Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it and I flip through.
There we go. Right. You need to have the finished product in your hands. Right.
Yeah.
You've also done, I mean, you've got your blog, Views from the Whiteboard, right? What was the motivation to start the blog?
It was when I started going to conferences, and I just found, I'd come back from the conference and I had loads of notes, and it was very much a place for me to store things for me so that I could easily find them again.
Yeah.
Because, I'm terrible. Like, I've got my notebook here where I write stuff. And if I try and find something, I can spend like 5 minutes going through trying to remember, now, did that happen before that or did it happen after that? So the blog was very much a place to kind of type it up and then search box. Amazing.
Yeah.
So much easier to find things again.
No, excellent. And I'm doing a survey at the moment because I'm writing a short article. But looking at the sort of the effects of blogging. So I had two questions on there. I'm not sure if you've completed it. I think you did. Yeah,
I did, and then I got stumped by the second question.
No, I think
I would give.
No, oh yeah, that one. But the original two, the sort of the first two, I suppose. But the one was, has it helped you develop sort of professionally as a teacher or as someone in your position? And I imagine it has. Is that correct? It's helped you sort of reflect on that and develop in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have a visible presence, because a blog can kind of act as a portfolio as well. So definitely, I mean, I don't think I've deleted any posts, but sometimes when I read back to like my first post like 12 years ago or whenever it was, and I think, oh my God, did I really think that? Like, it's interesting to see how my process has changed. So I think when I started, it was very much, here's a fun game.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm much more like, okay, so this is the game and this is why it's important and this is what it practices. But as I say, at the beginning, it was very much more for me.
Yeah. Do you think it's helped you at all with work in terms of being visible to employers, publishers at all?
Yeah. So when I started working, doing some content writing for a group called Hubbub Labs, they're based up in Barcelona. And originally I got the contact through Kerry Jones because they approached her and she said, I'm not available, but here you go, this is tea. As I think then they kind of looked at my blog to see if I kind of could do what they wanted me to.
Right. Yeah. Brilliant.
And a couple of times people have kind of looked at my blog and said, oh, do you want to do a guest blog post or something like that, which is quite nice as well.
That's very cool. Yeah. I'm trying to encourage more teachers to do it and looking at two aspects. Does it help you as a teacher, sort of get your thoughts onto paper? For me, it has. It's helped me phenomenally. But also in terms of employment, it's helped me. I mean, I now work as sort of a freelance trainer for Cambridge University Press and Cambridge Assessment because one reason is because of the blog. So it's definitely, for me at least, it's definitely something that I think teachers should do if they're really looking to develop as well as increase their online profile.
Turn my light on, it's been dark.
No, go for it. One of the other things I'd like to take a quick look at is the Development Hub. So I joined you last week for the trainer talk session that you had, and I was like, oh, this is amazing, it's great. We had all teachers all really experienced teachers were talking about things, and it was great. And then I realized it's quite a new endeavor. No, you've only just kind of started it. What was the motivation behind the TEFL Development Hub, and how's it going, and where do you see it going?
So it's with Simon Perlman, who I work with at Active Language, and it kind of came about that last year when everyone was thrown into online teaching, we ran a series of webinars with kind of like practical ideas for people who had no experience teaching online. And they were really well received. And we kind of realized that people were looking for something.
Right.
Whether it was that they were looking for more constant input or a community, or we felt that they were looking for something. So we decided to set up the TEFL Development Hub with the idea that originally it was that we would run fortnightly webinars. But then it's kind of grown from that. So we do the fortnightly webinars and then we alternate those with coffee breaks. Brilliant. To kind of provide that space for people to get together and hang out and chat. And then we have these more focused events. So on a Tuesday, we do the trainer talking time, we do a monthly management meetup, and then as well, we do a focused forum. And it was very much about kind of keeping conversations going. Like I said before, you know, one of the schools that I worked at, they would send us off to Athea once a year, and that was kind of your development. We were saying, you know, people need to be developing continuously. That it needs to be CPD. Yeah, so that's what our plan is, to kind of provide a space for people to be constantly engaged in the profession.
Brilliant. And if teachers are watching this and they're like, oh, how can I get involved in that? What's the best way to get involved?
We now have a website.
Wow.
Yes. So, yep. So, yep, you can find us on Facebook. So the Facebook group is the TEFL Development Hub, which is where we post the details of the live events and where we live stream the webinars. And then as well, we're quite kind of, there's a Spanish word, pesao, which is not annoying, but so if anybody posts, anybody's welcome to post in the group, but we say that there always has to be a question.
Okay.
Because again, we wanted it to be more than just a place where teachers would post lesson plans or links. And so it's very much about engaging people. So anytime anybody posts, they have to post a question. Right. And then that kind of encourages people to respond. In a stream of, here's a lesson plan, here's a link to an interesting video.
Yeah, I that was quite an interesting one about the idea of reading aloud the other day. That was it was very controversial. Interesting. I still think the jury's out, but it was quite interesting.
I mean, it was interesting as well, because I was always in the don't do it camp, but then reading some of the comments about, you know, people had done research into the benefits of out from the teacher's point of view and also from the students. And I was like, oh, actually, you know.
I mean,
things.
Yeah, Rachel came across with some brilliant stuff from Anderson. And the only thing I think that I'm against it is the sort of the pedagogical value of whole class reading aloud activities, which I've seen done many times and done very poorly, I think.
Yeah, I think my issue with it is reading aloud is a phonological activity, but teachers tend to see reading aloud as a reading activity.
Reading activity, there you go. Yeah.
So then they, you know, there's no focus on pausing or connected speech, or it's just very much and then he said this, and then yes, well, that was why I was always against it. It wasn't done as a phonological activity, which it should be.
Yeah. Interesting. That we'll save that for again another chat. We'll go deep into that. Okay. Now I also saw on Twitter that there was some news for the Development Hub. Now, this video is not going to be done by the time that you release the news. Can I get an insight before the
news is literally that we've got the website.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, so because we're announcing it in the webinar that I'm doing in like an hour's time, so that was like, yeah, we've got a website. But
okay,
that was
brilliant. All right, cool. Well, I'll make sure to put links and stuff to the website, and hopefully we get more teachers looking at it. That would be amazing. Now you've done predominantly teacher training, but you've also done materials development. If you had to, okay, I've got teachers here that are looking. Okay, what advice? They're saying, give me some advice to this. What advice would you have for teachers that are looking to move into teacher training or even materials development? What advice would you give to them?
So I think if you're getting into teacher training, obviously it can be a tricky area to get involved in because there's limited courses. Like if you're thinking of getting into being a CELTA trainer or a CertTESOL trainer, there's limited numbers of courses there, so it can be tricky to get into that. But I would say to start by offering to do training in your own centre, or if you're not working in a centre where there are lots of teachers, try and kind of set up a local community and kind of get experience of doing it that way, so that then when you do get into a kind of an environment where you can train as a professional, you can kind of go and look at, and I've done this and I've done this and I've done this.
Right. So build up that portfolio with some sort of, some evidence, if you will, that you've done it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think any good.
Yeah, in-house sessions are a great way to do it. I remember you saying, it was in your chat with Rachel, that feeling that it's very different when you're training people that you know and people that you don't know.
Yeah.
And so actually doing it with your colleagues is sometimes kind of better to do first, because they're experienced.
Yeah.
To see them afterwards.
You definitely get very honest feedback. Sometimes too honest, but yeah. but no, it's definitely a good gadget. I definitely will say that I'm always much more nervous. I don't really get I don't really get super nervous anymore, but still get a little bit nervous when it's for teachers I know than when it's sort of external workshops. But yeah, that's a good thing, sort of facilitative anxiety, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And I suppose were you talking about like teachers getting experience running those workshops? I think any good school that has sort of a profession, like a professional development portfolio, they can record that, and they should be able to give a reference for that, I think. That's a good way as well. One of the new sections of these chats is books. And I like before, when I was sending you sort of the message about what we could do, you could choose the theme, whether it's teacher training or something else. Did you choose a theme or?
Well, I chose 3 books.
Okay, brilliant.
Kind of 2 of them are related. So got them here. So I've always been a very practical person, which yeah, I'm guilty of being one of those presenters at a conference going 15 ideas to use on Monday. Because it sells. That's kind of what a lot of people go to conferences.
Teachers want that. They do want that.
Yeah. But I think now I'm kind of balancing it a lot more with and this is why this is a good activity. So I'm definitely developing in that way. So a couple of my books are very much practical things. So I've got Sandy Millen's ELT playbook.
I have that as well. It's brilliant.
And I'm going to get the teacher training one as well.
Yeah, me too.
Been around for a while, but I haven't got around to getting it yet. So this is really good for kind of practical ways that teachers can develop.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like about it is that if you do work in an environment where you don't have that support, where maybe management isn't interested in professional development, maybe you're a freelancer, maybe you're working in an environment where you don't actually have much contact with colleagues, which a lot of people find nowadays as well. So that's really nice. Lots of really good questions to kind of help you reflect on your teaching.
I really like her. So I've done a few blog posts with her with some of the tasks in there, and she really encourages teachers to, there are different ways in which you can reflect. You don't have to write a blog post. You can just, speak to yourself almost, or you could do something. I've even used them with my teachers. So I've given them as tasks to teachers that they say, I'm looking to do something like this. Okay, have a look at that. In fact, another guy, someone who was interested in writing their blog, they're like, where can I start? And I recommended Sandy's book because there's some brilliant things in there that can really get you to reflect on many aspects of teaching. Excellent. Yeah.
I think this one and the next one as well, they're both easy books that you can just dip into. It's not kind of a more academic text with a lot of theory, and you sometimes it's a bit of a slog to get through it. This is very much kind of pick it up and go, oh, that sounds fun, 2-minute read, and away I go. So my next one, also developing, is Duncan Ford's The Development Teacher. So again, lots of really practical ideas for how you can develop as a teacher. And one of the things that I like about this is that he talks about kind of the circles. I can't find which page it's on now. Okay, so there's like the 5 circles of development. So it takes it from you and your students, you and your colleagues, you and your school, and you and your profession. So he's kind of looked at different areas, different stages of development. Which
I agree. That's a brilliant book. I've done a number of those tasks in there as well. I think they're on point. Really nice.
And my last one, this is more just because practical grammar. So since getting into materials writing, I'm amazed at how anyone managed to write a book without the internet. You know, I spend so much time like researching topics or looking things up, but I always have this on hand for kind of really simple grammar explanations.
Right.
Because I think sometimes when you're doing a course book, it has a grammar syllabus and you have to kind of give a quick rule. And sometimes if you look at it, again, it's that thing of finding the right level.
Yeah.
A B1 course book, you want to make sure that you're giving them the B1 grammar.
Yeah, of course.
All of the grammar for modal verbs, for example. And so I find this really handy to kind of go, okay, so that's what I should be teaching them at this level. So very handy.
Is that a book made for students or for teachers?
I imagine it's more for students. Because it's got your practical activities.
Yeah.
Easy presentation. Just do a little sale of the book now. But also I would say, so when I first started, when I did my CertTESOL, I had to do English grammar and use. This was one of my
go-to. It's like the Bible almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you read Parrot for the DipTesol and go, oh my life, there's so much I don't know. DipTesol is here's everything you don't know about what you've been doing.
I read when I was doing for module 1, I read Parrot, a grammar for English teachers. And now one of my director, Patrick, he's doing the DipTesol. He's finishing unit 1. I think it's unit 1 where you do same as module 1 basically. I think. And he's going through all that again, like he's getting ready for the exam that they're going to do in August. And they obviously have the form meaning use activities at the start. I'm like, oh, I need to get back into that. I've forgotten a lot of, going really, really deep into detail. And so, it'd be really, like you said, maybe even going back, maybe I'd like to do a dip one day as well to go just to refresh everything. I think there's a need to do that sometimes it is like at the moment I'm focused on task-based language teaching. That's what I'm reading about, what I'm writing about at the moment. But like even that's not very grammatical focused, because obviously it's sort of focus on form or some focus on forms later. But so there's definitely things that I've studied on the Whiteboard, the Delta, and I need to go back and to go over again 100%. Yeah.
I think as well, something I find difficult being on social media, that feeling of always not knowing enough.
Yeah.
Whatever the topic is, whether it's something related to ELT or, you're on Twitter and a news article pops up from Thailand, and because quite a few ELT people in Thailand, it sounds like a really big thing, which it probably is, but it doesn't affect me, but I feel like I should know about it because all these other people that I know about it, sort of thing.
Yeah,
that feeling of I should be reading more, I should be doing more, I should be developing more.
I was watching a talk yesterday by Sivana Richardson, who's like one of my favorite people in EOT. I love her. She's no holds barred. She's just like, she says it how it is, and she'll just destroy any sort of poor judgments about the industry. She should just say it as it is. Anyway, she's talking about development and the value of development, and she's talking about demand high and things like this. And you're reflecting and thinking like, am I really living up to that? Am I doing this? Silvano, you're right, but I don't know if I'm doing it. So I need to get back into it. So yeah, it's this concept, but I think that's also a good thing. It's pushing me to always reflect on my situation and see how we can get better. Which is important. I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as well that within ELT, there people have so many passions. So like TBLT, I know very little about TBLT, but you know, then it sounds like lots of people are doing TBLT, and then you kind of go, oh, should I do more about TBLT? But it's important, I think, for people to find what they're really passionate about within the industry, whether it's a particular methodology, or whether it's phonology, or whether it's conference presenting or blogging. So I think, you know, it's easy to find within this whole big field something that really
interests you
and inspires you.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Hopefully for some people it's teacher training, materials development, being an amazing teacher, whatever it is. Let's hope they do it. Well, Teresa, I won't keep you any longer. You've been absolutely amazing this morning. Thank you very much for your insights, for your time, for being here, and for your recommendations and advice. I'm confident that this is going to get around to some teachers, and they're going to feel really inspired to stay within the industry, or even to develop into further career paths. So again, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Teresa. Well, take care, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see each other again for Development Hub, and we'll catch each other around. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.